Shrek has fun characters and surprisingly heartwarming moments. Those characters range from noble heroes to psychotic villains. But in this fairy tale world with magic and adventure, we can't forget about brain power. Which of these fairy tale creatures has the most brains? And who needs to study a little bit more? Hey guys, I'm Brad with Wicked Binge, and this is Shrek Characters, Dumb to Brilliant. First, it's the practically brainless. This spot is reserved for those who have less than average intelligence, or they're stupid. Taking the gold medal of most dumb, we have Mongo, the giant gingerbread man, and the babies. Starting with the youngest characters in the series, we have both the ogres and the dragon-donkey hybrids. They earned a spot on the dumber side of the spectrum simply because they hadn't developed enough to gain any natural intelligence. They developed motor skills and were able to recognize their parents, but that was about it. With Mongo, he wasn't the brightest either. He made a mess of Far Far Away before Donkey finally got his attention. Our silver medal of most dumb goes to the ogre hunters. Remember, this is a world where it's normal to encounter witches, fairies, and talking cookies. You wouldn't think an ogre living nearby wouldn't be a problem, but they couldn't take a hint even after Shrek went through the trouble of posting dozens of signs to leave him alone. We also have to mark them dumb for their lack of ogre knowledge, despite claiming to be prepared. They didn't notice Shrek sneaking up on them, and they were easily frightened by Shrek's stories about using eyes for jelly. Our bronze medal of most dumb goes to Dragon. While she is a fan favorite, Dragon was well established in the first film to be motivated by how many arrogant knights she can eat, not to mention she was distracted by flattery. Dragon gets points for being able to communicate with others in her own way, teaming up against Charming and Farquaad. She showed a level of understanding when around Fiona and the princesses, despite not speaking the same language. Next is the nobleman and his son, and the women from the barn. Both groups were caught off guard very quickly. The women fawned over Shrek's human form, disregarding any danger that may have happened. As for the nobleman and his son, they were mugged after being tricked into getting out of their coach. While we're sure the nobleman didn't have a chance against Puss, it was a really poor choice to wander the countryside without protection. After all, the rich got robbed pretty often with people like Robin Hood around. Next is one of Charming's henchmen, the Cyclops. He wasn't as clever or charismatic as some other villains. When he wasn't being used for muscle, his most evil deed was removing stamps from a few envelopes. But he was a caring and compassionate parent. That doesn't make him an established genius, but it did show he was able to take care of someone. Next are the grade school students. These characters can improve their craft or vile schemes, but they have a way to go to the top. Our first character in this section is the Big Bad Wolf. They don't get a lot of speaking roles, but they fought Fairy Godmother and Prince Charming. They also appeared in random places, like in Fiona's old tower, just to have a place to escape from the rest of the world. Also, they casually brushed off Prince Charming, and they didn't warn Shrek or Fiona about this guy trying to find the Princess of the Dragon's Keep. I mean, cell phones didn't exist, but letters did. Next are the 3 blind mice and 3 little pigs. They proved that 3 heads are not always better than 1. We give them credit. They helped Shrek when he was in prison. But we dock points because they didn't think things through. They got distracted by code names and other antics. And the pigs slipped up when Shrek had gone to find the next heir.
Enough! Shrek went off to bring back the next heir!
Taking our next spot is Pinocchio. Much like the other members of Team Shrek, he got distracted. We give him more credit due to his ability to twist his answers to Charming, not giving away where Shrek was. And Pinocchio was able to tip off Shrek as to what was happening in Far Far Away. However, we aren't sure why the curtain was stopping Pinocchio from talking to anyone. And why would he bother trying to look cool dropping into the dungeon when he was just gonna get tangled up? I mean, he looked confident at the time, and then it was clear he hadn't done it before. We're giving the next spot to 2 different groups, the tourists and the partygoers. They're basically the opposite of the hunters. They're smarter, because they were able to judge Shrek on his character and reputation, rather than assuming he was a monster. Next is Principal Pinchily. Running a school must take a lot, but Pinchily was awful at reading a room. And when Arthur was being bullied, Pinchily just hopped on the bandwagon of cheering for Arthur to be eaten. For a guy introduced through a just say nay lecture, he sure caved into mob mentality easily. Next up on our list is the old woman. We can't fault her too much. Selling a talking donkey is simple on paper, but we can't believe she didn't consider the possibility of Donkey not talking. This is something she should have thought through in a world where people are imprisoned for far less than just looking crazy. Next is the nanny dwarf. We're not sure what blackmail Snow White had on him to get him to agree to be a live-in nanny, but we applaud his commitment.
He's a live-in babysitter.
Where's the baby?
At the end of the film, he found Shrek and Fiona's home to go through with the job. But we're docking points for him not understanding where the baby was. Next on the list is Guinevere and Lancelot. For the most part, they were jaded teenagers. They weren't the most considerate, but they were some of the few to speak to Shrek without being visibly scared of him. On the other hand, they thought too much of themselves. Guinevere displayed poor judgment, encouraging her friend to ask Shrek out, while Lancelot was already full of himself from his knight status. Next is the average folk. These guys are pretty average in terms of intelligent. Not too smart, not too dumb, like C students. First in this section goes to the Master of Ceremonies. He was in charge of leading Shrek through the role of king. He was also more focused on tradition than what would work best for Fiona and Shrek. It more came off that the Master of Ceremonies took advantage of their inexperience in a royal setting to go nuts with his presentation. After all, we never see Harold and Lillian wearing tons of makeup and clothes that strict movement to the point of almost stopping blood flow. Next is the ugly stepsister, Mabel. Mabel ran the tavern with her sister, and she proved to be a decent business owner. She wasn't easily swayed by Charming's flirty nature and had a no-nonsense approach. Taking the following ranking is the Gingerbread Man, or as he was commonly called, Gingy. Of the lesser members of Team Shrek, Gingy was on the ball. He was able to get Shrek, Donkey, and Puss free, even with Pinocchio getting tied up and the mice falling all over the place. He helped them locate the Muffin Man to get Mongo, and Gingy tricked Farquaad, distracting him from where the fairy tale creatures were hiding. Not to mention, Gingy had been the first to recognize Shrek on television. Next is Captain Hook, one of the main villains in charge of Charming's army. Hook was sent to capture Shrek in the air, but Hook was also clearly suffering from some delusions. We can't name a lot of people that would insist on a piano being drugged to a fight. And when the villains stormed far, far away, Hook was mistaking a lot of young boys and girls as Peter Pan and Wendy Darling.
It isn't Peter Pan.
His name's not Peter.
Next is the Muffin Man. We don't know what method the Muffin Man used to bring his treats to life. It's set up as though Muffin Man was responsible for creating an entire cookie-based society when we see Gingy's memories. Next on the list is Robin Hood. We all know the story of Robin Hood, but this Robin Hood was more interested in having a musical entrance. When he came across Fiona and Shrek, he falsely assumed that Fiona was a prisoner. It took Fiona knocking him unconscious for him to stop. Next is the Magic Mirror. After he was unveiled to Farquaad, the mirror quickly learned not to get on Farquaad's bad side if he wanted to avoid getting shattered. Being a magical object, he had the ability to know things about the princesses he was displaying to Farquaad. He knew all their quirks, life stories, and even Fiona's secret curse, which he attempted to warn Farquaad about. Next is the almost forgotten member of the royal family, Arthur Pendragon. Arthur didn't appear to have many long-term plans before Shrek came to get him. He admitted that he thought the family had forgotten about him.
I can't believe it. Me a king?
When they needed a way to get back to far, far away, Arthur was able to trick Merlin into using his magic. Arthur was fooled by Shrek, but we can't hold that against him too much. Shrek could be a convincing actor after all. In the end, Arthur was able to help convince the villains to leave Charming before taking his place as king. Now we have one of the most jaded characters of the series, the receptionist. He was in charge of managing appointments and walk-ins that sought out Fairy Godmother. Being unappreciated in the workplace made him easy to trick when Shrek claimed to be from the Union. However, it would have been hard to resist. After all, they don't even get dental. Next is Sleeping Beauty. Usually unconscious or on the brink of it, she wasn't normally the most enthused when it came to whatever everyone else was doing. She tried using her curse to get out of confronting Charming, but she came around, using her sleeping curse to take out henchmen. Next on the list is Fiona's father, King Harold. Harold wasn't the smartest frog to come out of the pond, but we applaud how far he came. He was able to win over the love of his life and save his daughter from being the victim of a love spell. But that didn't mean he didn't cause more than a few blunders. The whole reason that his daughter was cursed was that Harold didn't think about how the fairy godmother would want a favor in return. A teacher that was relieved from his job for mental health reasons, we have Merlin. While he was powerful when it came to his magic, he had a lot of issues that interfered with how well those spells were executed. He had helped Arthur and Shrek make some progress in dealing with their inner turmoil, but in the end, we had to dock him a lot of points for eating rocks just because they're organic. Our next spot goes to Rumpelstiltskin's army of witches. Like Merlin, they displayed a lot of magical abilities, but but they also proved to have some excellent bounty hunter skills when working with Rumpelstiltskin. The witches were always quick to organize and overpower an area, making them a force to be reckoned with. Next is Doris. We had to rank her as far more brilliant than her sister for finding a way to make a life for herself among the high society and far, far away. Doris had adapted and become close friends with Fiona and the other princesses, teaming up with them to help take down Charming. Next are the College Bound. These characters are so close from the top. They can be the best, but are just short. Starting off the section is Snow White. Snow had a charisma she knew how to put to use. Yeah, she was abrasive, but she could get others to do what she wanted pretty easily. This is seen when she uses one of her dwarfs as a baby shower gift. Following is another princess, Rapunzel. Much like Snow White, she was known for being passive-aggressive and very stuck in her ways. She was exposed for portraying Fiona and the others to be Charming's queen. Rapunzel had made the poor judgment call to believe that Charming wouldn't hurt the princesses and then allowed things to continue. That was a bad call, and likely wound up with her living the rest of her life away from the kingdom of Far, Far Away. Next is Lord Farquaad. Farquaad was insecure, but he clearly knew how to keep his people in line. He sent his men off to die, made his people laugh on cue, and he declared a war against fairy tale creatures. Yet, nobody rebels against him. We're not sure what his pull was, but it worked. Next is the Pied Piper. He was a man of little words, but a lot of music. He found a way to use something simple to control nearly every type of creature. That skill made him a useful bounty hunter and formidable opponent. We can't blame him for not expecting a cat and donkey to help Fiona and Shrek escape. Now we have Queen Lillian. Lillian didn't trust the fairy godmother, and she was right. Lillian also got them out of prison. However, we have to dock her points for holding off on freeing everyone until after Snow White commented on her age. Our next ranking goes to the Ogre Rebellion. The rebellion was efficient, well supplied, and had an excellent gift for camouflage. They set up successful traps to lure large animals and used complex strategies to take out Rumple and his witches. Not to mention the amount of intel they got and the weapons they can craft was impressive. Happiness is never too far away with the fairy godmother. She was able to charm everyone in Far, Far Away. When Shrek used her happily ever after potion, she was able to get her son to take Shrek's place in the palace. When Fiona wasn't falling for Charming, fairy godmother took it a step further by instructing Harold to slip her a love potion. Not only did fairy godmother have powerful magic, but she knew how to manipulate people so they didn't interfere with her work. She was able to rattle Shrek's confidence in his relationship with Fiona by spouting out how ogres didn't have happily ever afters.
Ogres don't live happily ever after.
Ending the section is Puss in Boots. He made a decent living from people like King Harold, who hired him to take out any nuisances.
Fear me, if you dare.
After joining Shrek, he helped steal the happily ever after potion and held off the knights in the castle. Even in Donkey's body, Puss proved to be able to adapt as they took down Charming. When Shrek had been trying to win over Fiona again after Rumple ruined the timeline, Puss had seen for himself that Shrek had been telling the truth. And when the Piper enchanted all the ogres, Puss's quick thinking got Fiona and Shrek to safety. Finally, we have the Geniuses. These characters can run large-scale operations. They're dangerous and powerful because they know how to outsmart anyone. Truly Machiavellian. The first spot in this section goes to Prince Charming. He was once a spoiled kid, and then he took after his mother, using manipulation and force to get what he wanted. After he felt robbed of the kingdom, he rallied the villains and staged for Shrek to be executed in front of everyone. Charming also tricked Rapunzel into betraying the princesses with the added bonus of having her as a love interest in his performance. Next is Fiona. Fiona was very naive for much of her youth. She spent years fantasizing about the romance she was promised by her parents, but that didn't mean she couldn't take care of herself. Fiona was able to master fighting all on her own, and we saw that she could command an entire army against Rumple. Fiona could have easily wasted her entire life in that tower. Still, she was able to escape and forge her own path. We're giving the bronze medal of Most Brilliant to Shrek. For an ogre who spent much of his life avoiding people in a swamp, Shrek knew how to navigate the world. He was able to trick the receptionist into thinking he was a union rep. He was able to locate Fiona because of the stories he'd read. He'd gotten the idea to have the Muffin Man create Mongo just by looking at Gingy. Even when pinned against the wall by Rumple, Shrek could do the impossible and get Fiona to fall for him again, leading him to getting true love's kiss. The silver medal of Most Brilliant goes to Donkey. Donkey was easy to write off as the comic relief, but he was much brighter than he was given credit for. From the moment he was introduced, we saw him avoid revealing he could talk until he thought he was safe.
Now I'm a flying talking donkey.
He was able to see past Shrek's attempts at being scary, and he not only figured out Fiona's secret, but also how she and Shrek felt about one another. When Shrek was struggling to find a way to make things right, Donkey brought up the exit clause and helped Shrek figure out what they needed to break the contract. And he got through to Arthur after the teenager nearly turned his back on Shrek. And the gold medal of most brilliant goes to Rumpelstiltskin. It helps to have the ability to make magic contracts. Still, Rumple had a way of gaining a lot of information on whoever came to his doorstep. Rumple also had a knack for making himself appear as harmless as possible to get people's guards down. The choice to completely make Shrek cease to exist was a drastic move, but you have to admit that he went about it cleverly. Having someone willingly sign over their life isn't easy. Alright guys, before we go, we wanted to hand out some medals. Taking the Darwin medal, we have Mongo. Yeah, he was lovable and everything, and it was hard to watch him sink into the moat. But the fact is, Mongo's purpose was just to be the muscle to get in the castle, which he had to be led into doing because he kept getting distracted. The Lust medal goes to Prince Charming. Charming was concerned with his looks above all else. He was always fussing with his hair and using his looks to get what he wanted from people. He was far more concerned with his glitter cherry lip gloss than he was Fiona's discomfort. The Wrath medal goes to the fairy godmother. Whenever she didn't get her way, she was quick to bust out her wand and make threats. Even when she was in full view of the kingdom, Fairy Godmother was so driven to take Shrek out of the picture, she didn't care about her image being damaged, and eventually that anger did her in. The Greed medal were awarding to Rumpelstiltskin. By the time Rumple could catch a break, he wasn't happy with going back to his regular contract business. He had to take over the kingdom, and when that wasn't enough, he ran the palace like his own personal club, ignoring the people of far, far away entirely. The Sloth medal goes to Sleeping Beauty. It's hard to outdo someone who was literally cursed to sleep all the time. We get that it's not really her fault, but she fell asleep standing up, tried using her curse to get out of working with the other princesses, and face-planted out of a limo. Taking the Pride medal this time around, we have Lord Farquaad. There were a lot of arrogant characters in this series, but Farquaad was the only one to construct a kingdom that catered to his low self-esteem. I mean, we all know that Welcome to Duloc song. Finally, our last award, the Gluttony medal, goes to Donkey. We heard him go on and on about all the different foods he loved more than a few times. He busted into the royal palace to join dinner and tried intruding on Shrek and Fiona's space offering waffles. He then got caught by the Ogre Rebellion because he couldn't resist his favorite breakfast food. Alright guys, that's it. Let us know in the comments section if you agree with our ranking and tell us what we should cover next. Remember to hit that notification bell and binge our Dumb to Brilliant playlist, where we figure out which characters have the most wits, but most importantly, stay wicked.